SpectreVision Radio.
So, in fact, the reports do include glowing red eyes.
On that one, yeah, we've got two. We've got one from further in, strangely enough, next to another park. There's a theme here, Shannon, you may realise. And there were two stories there from the 1880s of people being chased up the road by a slightly smaller devil dog that disappeared into a wall after allegedly biting someone on the bottom.
Oh.
With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this episode of Into the Fray, I welcome the wonderful Paul Bestall on, and he is, of course, with Mysteries and Monsters and the Ghost Story Guys podcast with Brennan Storr. So you, myself, and Brennan, we did a little chitty chat, which is now available on all of our Patreon sides. But at some point during that chat, you mentioned that your mom's house is quite, or what, it was quite haunted. And I go, oh, well, is that, like ongoing or what's, and you're like, well, oh yes. And it's current. And I'm like, oh, so I knew that we had a whole nother episode that we needed to cover, besides the fact that silly me, I didn't realize that you hadn't actually been on officially for a full ITF episode, because I always do that before I have somebody on. I'm like, oh, let me mention they were on this episode, that episode, so people can go listen. And I'm like, where's Paul's episode? And there wasn't one. there was Patreon stuff, right? Yeah. So it was just, I guess, in my head, and so I'm like, well, this is perfect. So you are back for an official ITF episode. So thank you. That was a long intro. Sorry. Welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
That's all right. It's on a par with one of my intros.
I'm pretty bad at them, actually. I just start to ramble, and some people are like, that was too long. Other people are like, we need more information. I'm like, I need to be quiet. That's what I need to
do. Yeah. I think it's one of those things. I know exactly where you're coming from, because I sometimes have guests who come back on.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, when were they last on? And it's like 4 years or something. And I'm
know.
Like, wow. It just flies, Shannon, I think. And especially when it's part of our normal week, because obviously I do 2 shows, I work full time, live with my partner, I've got several hobbies. So there's a lot to juggle.
Yes.
And so you really do forget. So I have to go through lists and check things. I've just had a run of guests who haven't been on for ages. And you just think, well, I know these people. But I think because we see each other a lot on social media and we support each other and things, your brain kind of thinks you're there. But as you say, when you have a look, you realize, actually, no, that's never happened.
Yeah. It all just starts to meld together into this one big amalgamation. You're going, I was like, surely Paul's been on a main episode before. Nope. He has not. So,
well, I mean, it's 10 years since you started, I think, isn't it? There or thereabouts.
Yeah.
So
crazy.
Better late than never.
That's true. But at this point, it's like, damn near never. What in the world, woman? Let's go. Everybody loves you. So I've had people bring that up, and I'm like, oh, I'll get him on again. But in my head, it was a main, and it wasn't a main, and you know how it goes. So
hey,
thank you.
Fine. I'm glad to be invited properly.
Now, people might be able to guess, because of your beautiful accent, that everyone loves that kind of an accent, myself included, where you are from and what area of the world we might be talking about. But just in case, let's let everybody know the area of this beautiful rock that we might be speaking about today.
I reside in the wonderful steel city of Sheffield, home of Def Leppard. For anybody who's not really sure, because often people will say, well, how many miles outside of London is that?
How many miles is that outside of London, right? You're like,
200.
Yeah. You're like a little
200.
tiny bit.
Yeah, it's smack in the middle of the north of England in Sheffield. So we're equal distances to either coast, to the east and west coast. So we're here and on the edge of the beautiful and historic Peak District, which was Britain's first national park and is full of magic and mystery and wonder and strange tales from all parts of it. So it's it's a wonderful place. Lots to do, lots to see, beautiful museums, wonderful countryside. It's a jewel in the north of England, but I'm biased, so I would say that.
I did not blame you. And something that comes up a lot, of course, when you're talking about that part of the world is the fact that there's just so much more history. There has to be, because there just is. So also means that there are a lot of really, you see, like here in Vegas, we'll have a building that, it's been around since the Bugsy Siegel days, and it's real like old school Vegas, which isn't that old, but to us it's old. Oh no, we just knocked that shisa down. Get rid of it. Put something new and bigger and more monstrous in that same spot. So not even the things that are part of our history can we hang on to here, but there in your part of the world, you guys tend to leave things up. The beautiful moss is growing on it, and a lot of people have passed either over or on that land, and they live in those buildings or have lived in those buildings. So it's like that whole stone tape theory where things just bleed into the walls and it might stay there, right? So can you share a little bit before we get specifically into your side of things? What is in your area that you just like to bring up because it's just weird or cool or creepy? It could be cryptid or ghosts, whatever.
Well, we've got quite a few strange things essentially within a stone's throw of here. So about 5 minutes walk from my house is our local park, which is called Mearsbrook Park, which at the top has a Tudor farmhouse. So that's been there since the end of the 16th century, still there. And it's now a working museum and function area. There is a white lady that has been spotted wandering around there on a few occasions. When I asked the staff, they said, "Oh, don't start with that ghost nonsense, sir." Oh. So they obviously didn't want to talk about it, but that's often sometimes the way in Yorkshire, Shannon. Yeah. But further up from there, we've got another park, because Sheffield is known for having parks wherever it can, which is ironically called Graves Park. And next to Graves Park, we have a road called Bunting Nook, which is a lovely name. And that's where our resident black dog, our shuck, or bar guests, as we call them in Yorkshire, rather than the shucks, which are not sort of Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex description. And so that's probably our most famous city centre strange story. And I'm going on Christmas Eve for a ghost hunt up there, see if we can run into the devil dog. I hope it doesn't spoil my Christmas Eve or take us away, because I'm looking forward to opening some presents the following day. But we've got that. I mean, on the other side of the city, you've probably got the most famous Sheffield haunting, which is the Ghosts of Stocksbridge Bypass, which I think is one of those stories that's kind of taken on a life of its own, ironically.
How big is the black dog reported to be?
It's your typical giant, flame-eyed, hairy monster. So you would suggest the descriptions would tend to sort of, you would see probably like an Irish wolfhound or a timber wolf, that kind of, right, big, large enough for it to think that's not a wandering Labrador, I would suggest.
So in fact, the reports do include glowing red eyes.
On that one, yeah, we've got two. We've got one from further in, strangely enough, next to another park. There's a theme here, Shannon, you may realise. And there were two stories there from the 1880s of people being chased up the road by a slightly smaller devil dog that disappeared into a wall after allegedly biting someone on the bottom.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Literally.
Yes. You have less of a bummer now because of the black dogs. Sorry, chap. See, and if it was nowadays, we could DNA swab that saliva left on your bum and see what's doing. So when's the last time either one of the, like especially the one that you're going to, what is that, the Graves Park, when is the last time someone saw that guy?
1990s, so about 30 years.
Is there supposedly some way to draw a black dog out? Is it full moon or, some kind of a seance beforehand?
I don't know, and I don't think I'm going to try on that particular occasion.
Wait, you're not taking a Ouija board?
I'll take some dog chews.
Yeah, you're just like in a robe. You're like, ta-da, let's do this. Because there's, you go in the woods and you get a group of people in a circle. Things happen that you don't need to be seeing, Yeah,
that's why I always like to dress for seances like Blade, just in case. Pull off the overcoat and I've got loads of stakes and garlic infused bullets underneath.
You're like, you know how long it took me to get into this outfit? This ain't coming off. All right. You got all kinds of clips and things. Yeah.
So we've got that, and obviously the city centre's got plenty of ghosts. Ironically, a lot of them are connected with the Second World War, because we got bombed during the Second World War over 2 nights, which the 85th anniversary was actually last week. And strangely enough, where I sit, our next door, as you were talking about the age of places, this house where I live now is quite new, because it was only built in 1950, but it was rebuilt because the house next door took a direct hit from the Germans during the Second World War and obliterated it. And so there was just a giant crater where I'm sat now, until they rebuilt this portion of the street. There were 7 people in that house. They all died instantly, sadly. Jeez. And we lost 700 people over 2 nights because they bombed the wrong part of Sheffield. They were trying to get the steelworks, which are further out, and they hit the city centre instead. So where I live got absolutely decimated. And so you've got several stories in Sheffield city centre connected with the Second World War, like the main precinct essentially completely burnt down. So Sheffield was a complete skeleton afterwards. There was one hotel famously that also took a direct hit. They think 90 odd people were in it, Shannon. They're not sure. 7 people survived because they happened to be in the right part of the cellar. Everybody else in there was obliterated. And like I say, it's a rough estimate because there wasn't much left
that's terrible.
To find out exactly how many people were there. So that's always been haunted since. And a few of the buildings nearby it have got strange things going on. You've got a sort of shuffling, creepy, hooded figure that wanders around, which people thought was a bit odd until about 30 years ago. They discovered that's the site of a plague pit in Sheffield, where they just chucked the bodies in and covered them up, which not many people were aware of. We've just rediscovered our castle, which has been covered up for the best part of 700 years. So yeah, there's a lot of strange locations and ghosts lurking around.
Now, your next door neighbor, then, it was obliterated, but at the same time 7 people died. Does your neighbor experience anything in his place?
No, but we did.
Really?
So it's a bit of a convoluted story, this. So I'll try and cut the fat from the meat for you. So essentially, my partner's not from Sheffield, and we would walk around, and where we live, as I said, some of the houses, it all seems very hodgepodge. There's no kind of style. And so I said, well, I suspect why these houses don't look similar, or some things stick out like a sore thumb, is because they probably got blown up during the war. And so we started digging, and I'd never really dug into it that much. And so we found the list, and so we were going through, and obviously, as I said, this area got hit quite a lot, so it was quite well known, and there's some legendary stories about somebody getting blown up and landing under a bus and surviving and all this kind of stuff. And we found this list, and it had all 7 people on there, 5 women, 2 men. And we just thought, oh, well, that's terribly sad. Watched a few documentaries about it, saw some of the footage and the maps of the areas and things. And then about 3 weeks later, I was walking through the house, and I just walked into it. I couldn't see it, but it was a ball of cigarette smoke, which is very distinct as an aroma. As an ex-smoker, it's one of those smells that never leaves you. You can basically, when you stop smoking, you can smell cigarettes from about 3 miles away, it would seem, the way your brain works. And so it literally walked straight into it. It's like, oh, just real strong smell of nicotine and cigarette smoke. And whilst it wasn't that common, I would say it probably happened over the next 12 months about 10 times in different rooms at different times of the day for no apparent reason. Now, I don't smoke. My partner doesn't smoke. The neighbours don't smoke. And there's no way a ball of smoke can just appear in the middle of your house. Because you could walk into it, you could walk out of it, and it would be there for 10, 15 seconds, and then it would just go, completely gone. The strangest one was one night I was fast asleep, and at 3 a.m. it was obviously over my face because it woke me up, and it was making my eyes water. It was so pungent in regards to that. And literally, as I sat up, I sort of passed through it. And when I went, oh, my partner woke up. And as I started explaining what had happened, it just it vanished, gone completely. So since then, this is about 2.5 years ago now, it's probably happened about 3 or 4 times since. But the fact it happens in different rooms at different times is quite intriguing. Now, it may be just coincidence, and we hadn't noticed it before, because this was about 6 months after we moved in. So could it always have been happening and we just weren't there to spot it, and it just happens to have occurred within a couple of weeks of us discovering what happened to the next door house? Or the way our brains work was us digging into that history, a sort of exclamation to the other side that we were open and interested, and that's why they popped in and decided to wake us up with cigarette smoke. Who knows?
See, but as you say, cigarette smoke is it's a punch you in your face smell. I mean, you can be in your car and someone is in their car just slightly ahead of you, and if you have your recirc off so that the outside air is coming in, or if you have your windows down, it's a very potent smell. So I would imagine that's not just in you guys' head, or something that was planted because you learned of this information. So I know that you describe it as a ball of smoke, which how else are you going to describe it? Did you ever actually see the smoke, or was it more just this phantom smell that you walked into?
It was just a smell. There was no visible
actual vapors,
outline or anything. But because of what I'm interested in, I was sort of doing some basic Peter Underwood investigation. So I was walking in, walking out, moving my hands around. I mean, it didn't feel noticeably colder than the surrounding air, but it was a noticeable space that it was taking up. And I didn't get any kind of emotional reaction to it or anything. It was just affecting my vision and my smell, my sense of smell, really, because they were the two things. As I say, a couple of times it was so strong it made my eyes water.
Did you ever, when that's gone on, did you or your partner ever say out loud, who's this, or what do you, the classic ghosty questions? Did you guys ever do that?
Yes, absolutely. And nobody's come back so far. Though we did have some friends visit a couple of months ago, and we were talking about because we've got a massive cellar underneath as well. So the cellar's as big as the house. And so we were just down there doing a few things, and I've got, a few gadgets, ghost hunting gadgets and stuff, which, I don't put much faith in, but, it's good fun, and it's a bit of a laugh. I haven't taken any of my talking boards downstairs yet, and we've not gone full-blown seance in the cellar, but they both reported being touched or things blowing in their ears whilst we were downstairs. We just did it for an hour or so, which was quite interesting, and using those kind of apps where like a voice box kind of thing coming through and stuff. So it was interesting more than anything, but we've not kind of made a full-blown attempt communication. Not that I'm concerned or worried about letting anything in, but I think it's just, I'm one of those people who, regardless of which part of the life spectrum you're on, pre or post life, as it were. If you're happy hanging around and you're not causing much bother, then fine. Yeah, we can cope with an unusual smell for a few seconds every now and again.
That's pretty cool. I would think that was pretty cool. Anyway, that's as you say. You can hold up an EMF meter or some other gadget, heck, even a ghost box, and a random voice could come through. But unless it's directly connected to a question that was asked, I don't get too excited about that stuff. I just don't. So
yeah,
gotta be a real good tie-in.
Yeah. It's got to be really specific when you're doing things like that, I think, because otherwise it's as with anything, it's very easy to get carried away, and that's always the problem. Sometimes I think when we look into these kind of things. Yeah. But I've always been very open-minded, Shannon, but I'm also I'd like to think I've got a foot in both camps. I
think that's healthy. I think that more people need to do that. It's okay to go, you know what, this looks a little bollocky, so we're just going to take a step back and reevaluate. It's okay for not everything to be paranormal, because I hate to tell you folks, but it's not. Not everything is paranormal. So I'm trying to picture the setup. So I believe it was God bless me for bringing up another movie. Like Shannon never does that. The Conjuring 2, I believe, was based off the Enfield hauntings. Is that correct?
Yes.
So is your, right, yes.
Don't get me started on that.
But I'm picturing, yes. Anyways, we just upset half the audience. They're like, what are you saying? Anyways, the way that those homes are set up is they're basically right next to each other. They're attached. So they're not separate standing buildings. Is that how you guys are set up? Or even back when it was bombed, was it connected, or are these separate standing structures?
Yeah, so obviously Europe's quite famous for what we have known as terraced, where you've essentially got lots of houses that are built side by side.
Yes.
And you've got a front garden, back garden. Some of them would be separated by an alleyway at the back between different rows. So where we were was essentially larger houses that were, as we call them here, detached. You're either semi-detached or detached, or you're terraced. Usually that's how they describe houses in the UK. And so the bit we were in was all detached. Most of the other houses on the rest of the street are fairly substantial, big old Victorian build sort of places, big 4-bedroomed houses, beautiful views, nice gardens, lots of space. So this bit's been rebuilt in a kind of sort of, it's terrace, but it's not, because terraces are quite thin and tall, and these are slightly wider, but we are sort of joined on either side. We've got houses attached to both walls, and that kind of carries on halfway up on our side, which is the bit which got bombed. But the rest of the area's kind of got a mix. So there's a lot of houses that are separate, but then there's also lots of streets where you've got the semi-detached, where you've got two houses together, but they've both got space on either side of them for a driveway or a garage or something. And then you've got the next thing. So it's a bit, like I say, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. And then you've also got a few rows of terraced houses still. So the whole area is essentially a tourist guide to house building in the north of England, I would suggest.
Yeah, a good smattering of how to do. Because here's what's interesting, because you mentioned these cellars, and obviously if this one has a cellar, more than likely that one's going to have a cellar of some sort, or some sort of an underground something. A basement, we would call it here usually, but
yes.
No, that's not true. I think the East Coast says cellar. Never mind me. I'm going to zip it. There we go. Pin in that one. I'm just wondering, because once the man-made stuff is obliterated and blown away by these folks, and people died there, you have left the cellar and what's left underground. And I'm wondering if that's how, and who knows how this all works, and the power of things, and how things might get into and seep into another space, but maybe through that cellar space, that kind of energy, and if they went through any pain, if it wasn't a quick death, was able to seep through that way. I don't know. It's just a silly theory, but that's where my mind goes.
No, I think it's quite pertinent, because I'm a big believer in haunted land, because houses are quite transient, aren't they?
Yeah.
They come and go. Yes, there are some houses here that are hundreds of years old. Some even are, been around for 1,000 years, that are still knocking about or still in use. But the land will always be the same. So regardless of what house was built on top of it, what's underneath it was always there. And obviously, a lot of places such as Sheffield has seen a lot of movement over the years. It's increased dramatically. It was one of the driving forces of the Industrial Revolution here, was involved in both the War of the Roses and the English Civil War. Whilst most conflicts have kind of skipped around where we live, they tended to happen further south or further north towards Scotland. It's still seen a lot of trauma over the years, and so I'm always one of those people that believes that, your house might be 50 years old, but the grounds it's on are certainly not that young, unless you've done a complete landscape renovation and fetched foundations from somewhere else. And then again, you might be bringing something with those foundations, and if you believe in that kind of theory about the haunted land, then why not? Why would not it just reside there or something?
What kind of touch was going on with the friends in the basement? Like aggressive touch, or just like a hand on the shoulder kind of a thing?
Well, the male and female, man and wife. So the guy was getting prodded, like he was getting poked in the back, sort of halfway up, which you could say might be a child, or it could be a short person. Who knows? Could be somebody bending over. Once again, you've got to stop yourself leaping to, oh, well, it must be a child ghost, because where he was being prodded. Whereas his partner, his wife, she was getting rather gentle touches. So there was a kind of difference in the way they felt they were being touched, as it were. There was a bit more respect shown to his wife. So at least it had manners, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for no inappropriate touching. That's always a plus. Some even ghosts do have boundaries. Amen.
Good to know.
That museum, do they realize that if they would embrace this supposed white lady that is said to inhabit there, that would bring in a whole lot more revenue for said museum?
It's strange, because it's one of those things that Sheffield is quite a historic city, but it's not really embraced its supernatural side for a long time. It used to be quite hard to find out about locations and where the best hauntings were, and people being open about it. I'm not really sure, because obviously one of the most famous haunted cities in the world is York, which is obviously the capital of Yorkshire, and advertises itself as such, really. Whereas Sheffield, it's all a bit sort of, we're not mucking about with that stuff and nonsense kind of attitude. Whereas having lived here now for over 30 years, I can see how it's more open, it's more out there. You can go to these places now. You know about these things. Places do ghost hunts and stuff, Shannon. Whereas 10 years ago they weren't. So they might get there, but you never know. If not, it's there. I mean, I didn't really know much about that particular haunting until I stumbled across it 3 or 4 years ago. And I wrote an article about it for Haunted magazine, which is available worldwide, covering it, where I'd gone round and looked at the original cases and some of the witnesses that had been recorded in the local press and by a ghost hunter at the time. But yeah, I think it's one of those, it depends who you talk to in that museum, because the person I spoke to just didn't care. But it's also, in there, it's also got apothecary marks inside it still, which are like 350 years old, by the chimneys and the doors, to keep the witches out.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Or witch marks, as some people call them. So it's got those as well. So it's tied to it, but the current management don't really want to sort of do much about it, because it's got a couple of sort of totems inside some of the displays that were found inside it and in the gardens and things. So clearly there was that belief going on there. But yeah, they don't seem to be fully embracing its spooky side as much as perhaps they should.
Is there historical evidence that there would have been a woman who practiced dark things or light things, or who died there, or who, is there any kind of evidence as to why there would be a white lady reported there?
I think it's just one of those things, because it was a working farm.
Yeah.
It's, the land's been worked for several hundred years. Most of the buildings and houses around here were built sort of late Victorian, early Edwardian. So they're like 100, 150 years old, the oldest around here, other than that farm, which, as I say, is now being converted. So it's an area where it has its history. And at that point, it would have been sort of a village overlooking the main city of Sheffield, whereas as a lot of places in the UK have, the city has grown out into the suburbs and absorbed them.
Yeah.
And Sheffield is a prime example of that, because obviously it's kind of spread around, because Sheffield is one of 2 cities in the world built on 7 hills, along with Rome. And so the city centre's inside these hills, and it's kind of, its tentacles have gone out over the hills and sort of connected all these little towns and villages that were separate and are now part of Sheffield.
I know that on our little triple stack chat that I brought up the whole Liverpool time slips, because they are, world renowned time slips have happened in Liverpool. Do they embrace their time slips to where they have like these time slip tours, like, it's, there's various accounts of people starting a walk here and ending it there, and there was completely different people in shops, and whatever the vehicles were at the time were completely different. Did they embrace that in that city?
No.
Oh, no.
Bold Street, like most cities, they've got ghost tours and things. Now, I've not done the Liverpool one, Shannon, so I don't know if they even go on Bold Street. I'll be very surprised if they don't.
Yeah.
Because it's probably the most famous anomalous phenomenon that occurs in Liverpool. Yes. So it is quite well known, and it's one of the best known time slip stories in the UK. There's 3 or 4, but that's one of them. And it's certainly suffered from a bit of sort of controversy, because the original investigator and author that published the story has a history of exaggeration or even fiction in regards to some of the paranormal cases they've included in numerous books over the years. The kind of, somebody sees a ghost and they drop dead. Well, how do we know they saw a ghost if they're dead? How do we know this? There's a lot of those kind of stories in their work, shall we say?
Yeah.
Which, great stories, but if there's no witnesses, how have we got this story? Has the ghost left us a letter saying sorry or something? I don't know. But
he was talking to the ghost box, obviously, Paul. Hello. Oh, he said he dropped dead after seeing the ghost.
Yeah. Case closed.
Case closed.
But I think most people who are into weird stuff know about it, even if they're not from Liverpool. I know, obviously, I certainly did. But Danny Robbins, with his Uncanny series, obviously covered it for the TV version of the show, which I'm not sure you guys, if you get it, it'll probably be on BBC America. But obviously, Danny does a podcast called Uncanny as well, which has become a gargantuan in British podcasting. And so it's having a bit of a revival because more people know about it. And as I said, the controversy about it was obviously the source material and only one person being there. But the story was that this was a police officer, I believe, and he saw a young woman who was also experiencing the time slip in the shop, where they both seem to have walked into the 1950s, because this happened in the mid-90s. So obviously the fashion and style and even the design of the store and what it sold were completely different, and they were still wearing their normal clothes, and they both saw each other and looked shocked. Nobody knew who she was until last year, and she came forward and appeared on television saying, I was the lady that saw the policeman, and I can categorically tell you this story is true.
Whoa. And that was on that Uncanny show that maybe we can catch here in the USA on the BBC America? Yeah, that is incredible.
So Danny went there with her, So they were stood outside the store. So the store now is completely different. I think is it a record shop or something? And there was a reason he went in, but then it turned into sort of like a haberdashery, like a woman's fashion store from the 1950s. And so everybody was walking about with hairstyles that looked completely different. Obviously, all the men were wearing suits and things that just are very unusual. If you see somebody in a suit these days, in the day, they're either working in an office or they're a solicitor, but you don't see that many people wearing suits, really. Whereas 50s, it was like de rigueur for all men to wear a suit.
It's been so long since I've read that account or heard anything of that account. How long did they experience that time slip together?
5 to 10 minutes, I think it was.
That's long.
And then they literally walked out, and everything was normal.
Wow.
Looked back, and the shop was changed and everything. So it was peculiar. And so, like I say, I mean, it's a really interesting place. I mean, Liverpool's brilliant. It's incredible. It's got so much history about it. Whether you love sport or music, Liverpool is just chock-a-block. They've spent so much redeveloping it. It is phenomenal. I didn't recognize it when I went back. It's completely different. Don't buy the fish and chips. They're the most expensive fish and chips I've ever bought, and they weren't very good.
Oh,
dreadful. Especially when you're that close to the sea, Shannon. Rubbish.
There's no excuse for that. That is a really good point. It's different if you get them here. You're like, well, import, time of delivery and all that, but there, come on now.
Yeah, you could go out the back of the chip shop and catch some fish. I think it was that close to the Mersey.
Give me that breading right now.
So I would like to go and do a ghost tour in Liverpool and have a look around there. But the other great thing about that is, strangely, once again, at the top of Bold Street, you've got a bombed out church that they kept. So that got hit during the Second World War. The roof burnt down. And so that's now become sort of an art space, craft area. So you can go there, and they've sort of tried to preserve as much as we can. And whilst we were there was this wonderful little crafts fair on. So we had a little wander around there as a sort of cherry on the cake of visiting Bold Street, which was quite nice as well.
Do they have any black dogs or cryptids around the Liverpool area?
Most places have black dog stories.
Yeah.
Cryptids, we struggle really. I mean, the one that I will always hang my hat on is the ABCs, because they're all over the place. Your alien black cats. Because they're just sighted constantly. I mean, there was footage of one caught last year, 5 miles from where I'm sat now. Categorically, it is a large black cat. There is no if, buts, maybes about it, Shannon. It's caught on film. It's impossible to deny.
And I'm sorry, what do the authorities say there in England that you guys don't have those? They're not around, and that's even after they have been caught on camera and video many times. But they still they're still just bag over the head. They don't want to hear it. La 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 la. Yeah,
we've got carcasses. We've got DNA. There's no if, buts, and maybes about it.
Yeah,
we've got them. I think Dr. Carl Schuker, who's one of our leading cryptozoologists here, he wrote an article in the Fortean Times about 20 years ago. And I think at that point there were 31 non-native species of cat that had been killed or found in the UK.
Whoa.
At that point. Leopards, cervats, all kinds of things. Pumas, a very famous story from Scotland. Felicity the puma, who was a pet that somebody just released, and was so tame, she approached people and ended up living the rest of her life out in Edinburgh Zoo, I think it was, somewhere. So you've got that, and there's tons of stories from all around the UK of that. You've got what happened with the Beast of Bodmin. You've got the big cat scene in Dartmoor, Peak District, as I said. That is probably quite well known to you guys, because that footage that I'm talking about was captured outside a little town called Castleton here in the Peak District in Sheffield. That's on Expedition X. So it was Josh Gates and his team that caught that footage. So is you can't deny it.
I mean, I guess it's the same argument that, and I know that a big black cat is a 100% real and verified bona fide creature. I understand that. So I'm just saying if you take that with Bigfoot, I guess it might be the same thinking that people don't want, that the people in charge don't want us little people, us peasants down here to be in the know, because we're going to these parks and these state parks and national parks and these outdoor areas and paying decent money to go to some of these places. And if we knew that things that could eat us or that were a lot bigger than us were out there, then we might stop going to said places. Is that the thinking as to why they won't go ahead and say this is, yes, there are big black cats in Britain?
Absolutely. I think this is an official standpoint that until somebody gets killed by one, because we've had, this is the other thing, we've had people attacked. There's a very famous story in London of a guy on a summer's evening was outside. He was a bodybuilder, 6'2", I think he was. He was attacked by a large black cat and had to fight it off in his garden. And police said, no, you didn't. You've just fallen down. You've made the story up. And he was like, I literally, why would I make this up? I mean, there have been people who have come forward with stories claiming to have been attacked by cats that have been proven to be not true.
Right.
But there's a lot more of people that have had close encounters like this particular chap. So it is crazy. But that footage is as clear as day. I mean, it made me laugh seeing Josh Gates talking to his two American colleagues whilst they were wandering around one of the local towns around here. What Phil Torres and Jessica Chabot thought of Chesterfield and the Peak District was never really explained, but it was quite funny. But if you see that footage, Shannon, like I say, it's on Expedition X. I think it's season 7, because it'll be the last season Jess was on it, I think. It's there. You can watch that whole episode on Discovery. It's there. You watch that and tell me what that isn't, because I know where it is.
Did that bodybuilder gentleman have any puncture wounds or deep, scratch marks that would be in line with a cat?
Yep. Yeah, he did.
And they still are like, your rose bush did that to you, sir. He's like,
exactly. I mean, when you think that the authorities, when the Beast of Bodmin went crazy, because that story is just balmy, that something killed 85 sheep in a week or whatever it was, they sent the Royal Marines in. So why would you send the Royal Marines in with snipers if there's nothing there? And they saw it and they tried to kill it and they missed. They couldn't catch it. And they've spoken about that. Some of the guys who were on that mission have spoken about what was going on there. And essentially they pulled out after a couple of, I think it was about 3 months. They were doing some scouting work and occasionally going out on the hunt for it, but they just couldn't catch it. And the sheep deaths eventually stopped. So they either thought it must have died or had moved on somewhere. But then again, that's once again, why do you send the Royal Marines? Because you never send the army here in the UK. You send the army and there's something really wrong. So why are you sending the Royal Marines out?
Just a regular kitty cat.
It's just a tabby. I mean, we have got some hilarious stories. I mean, there was a story a few years ago. This is known as the Barnsley lion, Shannon. This is hilarious, this one. So about 10 years ago, loads of people were ringing the police saying, I think there's a lion on the loose. And when the police turned up, it was a dog with alopecia.
Oh, poor thing.
And it got like a rough, so it lost all the hair on its body, but its tail and its paws and its head were all fluffy. And so people were thinking, so that was the Barnsley lion. That's happened before. I mean, somebody reported seeing a leopard dead in the road somewhere. And when the police turned up, it was a like a really crappy leopard jacket that had just been dumped.
Oh, it was just a jacket. It's not even a poor wayward animal with a disease or anything. Yeah.
Or a big stuffed toy or something. No, it was just a crap jacket.
This is like, really? I came out here for this?
But you'll get stories like those that'll just pop up. I remember when I spoke with Tony Healy, the Australian researcher and investigator, and he was telling me about when he went to Loch Ness and he started interviewing people. And he said he kept bumping into people that said, I've never seen Nessie, but I can tell you about the black cats that live around here. He's like, what are you talking about? And he was just on about people were bumping into, there was somebody who said that there was two, a fawn one and a black one, who were obviously a couple or a pair or whatever, that would always wander around. And then somebody said, oh, well, I'll show you where they used to keep the old ones. And somebody took him somewhere and there was all chains on the walls where they basically had them chained up as guard pets, essentially.
Gosh.
Rather than, so you got a guard puma rather than that. And so it's not beyond the realms of possibility, because obviously famously you could buy a lion in Harrods. This is not a made up story, Shannon. Harrods had an exclusive pet shop up until the late 60s, early 70s. And there is a remarkable story about two guys that ran a bookshop that bought a lion cub from Harrods in the 60s. And after 6 years, they realized it was too big. And it was lovely. And so they had to get in touch with a lady called Joy Adamson, who the film Born Free is about, who's a big lion conservationist. And so they arranged and took him back to Africa. And there is a video, I can't remember the bloody lion's name. There is a video where these two guys, 5 or 6 years, come back to Africa where he's gone. And everybody there's telling them he's doing really well, but don't get upset because he probably won't remember you. And so they were just shouting his name, and then he just appears on this hill. And he runs down to them like a dog. And he's hugging them. Honestly, it's giving me goosebumps talking about it. It's absolutely beautiful. So, I mean, that's 60 years ago. You could walk into Harrods and buy a lion. We're not talking about what people were doing 150 years ago. So they changed the law in the 70s here because people were buying lions and then, living in a terraced house in Dagenham and stuff. So they changed the law here and it became illegal to keep certain pets. And so a lot of people say that this change in the law in the 1970s in the UK is when a lot of people released their pets into the wild. And the argument often is that, well, black cats can't, big cats can't survive winters here in the UK. And I say, have you ever heard of a Siberian tiger?
Yeah, bollocks. That's
like, if a domestic cat can survive a winter in Britain, why can't a bigger thing?
Maybe they can find each other and, I don't know, breed. I mean, this is wild.
Yeah. Well, we've got a wildcat population here that's currently under threat because of breeding with domestic felines.
Oh, so, really?
Because we have a Scottish wildcat that's slightly different. It's got like a tuftier head and shorter ears. It's quite a distinct, like Manx cats, where they've got the stubby tail. So there's quite a distinct thing. So they're up there in Scotland. You've got a few in the north of England and stuff, but they're under threat because of cross-pollination as well now.
So if you see a cat with just a medium-sized tail, you're like, I know exactly what your mommy and daddy were looking like. I know what's going on here. You are not fooling anyone.
Yeah, somebody needs keeping in it. That's what that is.
Hey, unless he had an accident and half his tail got chopped off, he's being unfairly categorized. But hey, we'll go with that first explanation. Yeah, that's just wild. And I wasn't trying to just straight out of the gate go, a black cat that is known to exist is not the same as Bigfoot, but it's usually a follow the money situation. It comes down to money. So that's just wild that they just will not, they won't give up the ghost with that one.
Well, the difference here is that all our parks are free. You do not have to pay.
Oh.
You can just go.
So they just don't want the hassle of people calling and going, well, we need to kill them all, or we need to trap them all, or we need just the headache of the whole thing, maybe.
Yeah, because I mean, there are numerous species here. I mean, I'm trying to think where this has happened. We've just started reintroducing beaver in the UK because we eradicated beaver.
Oh.
And so we've started reintroducing them. So we've got European beavers and we've started reintroducing them. They've now started turning up in places they've not been introduced. And nobody knows what's happening here. And so one's turned up miles from where everybody else has been reintroduced. And so we're thinking, so is it one of those where nature finds a way and it's just gone for a wander and turned up there? Or are other people releasing them illegally? Oh, well, not illegally, because we're trying to bring them back. But it's not part of the program. They're just doing it. Because we had an incident a couple of years ago where somebody released 2 pet lynxes in Scotland, which were rescued. But that's not part of anything because people are wanting to reintroduce lynx because we don't have a native large predator, allegedly, in the UK other than a badger. Badger is technically the largest predator we have here in the UK. Because we don't have wolves, we don't have bears, but people want to bring the lynx back. People want to bring the wolves back. People are talking about really reintroducing bears, which were eradicated, 800 years ago here. Wolves is about 500 years. So there are animals turning up in the UK that are not supposed to be here. Capybaras are the best one. I didn't know anything about that. There's a population of capybaras that were living in the Norfolk Broads that had been released from a fur farm, and they loved it there. And I didn't know anything about that. I was like, what? Because I once won a golf holiday, one of my friends. We went to Italy, and one of the golf courses we played there, they said, oh, watch out for the capybaras. And I thought, yeah, they're just, like, stupid random. English area. We'll just tell them anything, watch out for the pasta tree or something, And there they were. There was like 30 or 40 of them all living around this lake. They'd all been released by animal activists in the 70s and had just settled there. Brilliant. Got their own waterhole. Lovely. They were enormous. But I did not expect to see a capybara on a golf course in Italy, Shannon. So the fact that they've turned up in Norfolk doesn't surprise me in the slightest. So we've got all kinds of weird and wonderful creatures that pop up.
Well, what's your opinion then on bringing wolves or bear back?
I think bears are a different level because this is the thing about this. In Europe, they've really done a great drive into sort of bringing these species back from the edge. To the point in Romania, they're having some real issues with bear attacks, which they've never had in the modern era. But once again, I think that's that kind of thing of people not being savvy in the woods or not showing the respect to their surroundings, not checking if bears live there, those kinds of things. But once again, that shows you, because a wolf turned up in the Netherlands the other year, and they were like, well, nobody's introduced them. How have they got here? Okay. So it's crossed all the way from Italy to the Netherlands, which is, 1,500 miles. And they're there. So they'll find a way. It's like, where do you think has the second largest population of raccoons in the world outside of the States?
Oh, I have no idea.
Germany.
What?
There's nearly 1 million in Germany now.
A million?
Yeah.
I never would have guessed that in a million years. Germany for the raccoons.
Yeah. Yeah. They're beginning to be a problem.
But here's the other problem, because we've done this here in certain states. You have this little problem here, right? Like, say it's a raccoon. You're like, well, what eats a raccoon? Well, we're going to put this big dog over here to take care of this dog. But then this big dog over here explodes. And guess what? Oh, you put me in Montana? Well, I don't give a shisa. I also want to travel east, and I want to travel west, and I want to travel south. And sure, some of these things are tracked, but things happen with trackers and technology, which we all know. So shisa happens, and then these populations of these animals, just like you said, they do what nature does. Nature finds a way, as well said in Jurassic Park, right?
Yes.
By the good doctor. Yeah. And that's exactly what goes down. And we're crazy to think that we can control 100% all of these different types of things. So I don't know. That's wild. So bringing in bears there would be, I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah. Because there are certain parts of the UK that are quite remote where, they're not even attached to the electricity grid.
Right.
And they've all got generators and stuff. But we're not that big.
No.
It's like 780 miles from the tip of Scotland to the end of England. We're not big, You're
like, naughty bear, get back up north where you belong. Like, no, they don't.
Where's your passport?
Yeah.
What are you doing this side of Hadrian's Wall? Back over the border, sunshine.
Exactly.
So, it would be interesting. And I think when you're talking about apex predators, really, because the other aspect of this, very similar to what happened in Yellowstone with the deer, is that our deer population has exploded because they're also protected now. And so you've got probably the largest deer population England's had since the days of Henry VIII, I would suspect, because there's no check on that. Well, unless you speak to certain people that say that's why we've got so many ABCs, because they love deer rather than sheep. So it would be interesting. I think I'm a big believer in rewilding, but I think you've also got to have a common sense approach to it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to end up with a cane toad situation, do we?
Talk about that, because somebody brought that up months back about the cane toad. What's that situation?
So Australian farmers were having problems with a certain beetle that was eating their crops. And what they thought the best idea was to get these fat toads from Central America to come over, because if there's one thing toads like to do, it's eat bugs. But what they didn't realise was that, firstly, nothing in Australia knew what the hell a cane toad was. Cane toads are incredibly toxic and will essentially kill anything that eats it. You can be, I mean, this is the other thing. You've got to be really careful with cane toads, because the poison can cause severe injuries to humans. It can cause blindness, can cause paralysis. There are certain videos, because in Australia, people are encouraged to go out with spades and smash them, but you've always got to wear your goggles and a mask and stuff, so you don't get anything in your eyes or anything like that, any of your orifices. And what they realised very quickly was that the cane toads, yes, they did like bugs, but these beetles lived on the top of these crops, and the cane toads just couldn't be arsed. It was too far up for them to bother. So they thought, oh, well, we'll not bother with those. And so they just bred and just spread across Australia like wildfire, because nothing eats them, or anything that does eat them either dies or vomits them back up, or just goes, ooh, and leaves them alone. However, one of the weirdest things of all this is that the COVID population of Australia, so your rooks, your crows, your magpies and stuff, have shown that they've worked out how to kill cane toads without dying. And so they're flipping them over and then killing them.
Oh,
so because the cane toads were only introduced to Australia in the 30s, I think it was. And so in literally less than 100 years, COVIDs have worked out how to kill them in Australia. Now that's amazing under any level.
Yeah.
And so you've got that. On a tangent to that, I didn't realise that despite this failure in Australia, somebody in Florida tried to replicate it in the 1950s. So there are cane toad populations in Florida as well. And exactly the same thing happened. So, yeah. Well done, everybody.
Well done, you. So poor Australia, man. There's so many things. And it's funny because that happened in Florida, because I say the same thing about Florida. What you can is so many things can and will kill you. And it's the same thing on Australia. Australia didn't need those damn things. And they couldn't even get their fat butts up to get the bugs they were supposed to kill in the first place. So well done. Yep. Well done, everyone.
Comedy of errors. It's up there with the guy leaving the top of the hive off the killer bees.
Where did that happen?
So that happened in the 50s, because obviously the killer bees are a hybrid. Mm-hmm. So they're basically, I think African, and so yeah, I think the African bees are quite aggressive and big, and produce a lot of honey. And I think they crossbred them with standard honeybees to try and create big, fat, pleasant bees that just made loads of honey. And whilst they were doing these experiments, somebody left the top of the hive and the swarm went. That swarm has now spread all the way up from South America into the southern US now. And that's only happened over the last 60 years. Same thing there.
I was not aware of that. Comedy of errors, as you say.
Yeah, I believe there is an episode of In Search Of from the late 70s that's talking about the killer bees invasion. So it was well known back in the 70s that this had happened, and it was moving forward. And so Leonard's there telling us about how bees are going to, and it's probably why you had so many strange bee movies in the 70s, like The Bees and Swarm, or The Swarm, or whatever it was.
And Paul, guess what creature is behind all of this tomfoolery? Oh, it's us thinking. Actually, I could just stop there. We're just thinking, and then boom, all of this happens. We're thinking we have good ideas. All right, absolutely. I'm sorry. I am the worst with tangents. Okay, although I love to talk about animal stuff. I honestly do, especially the corvids.
Yeah. Well, I've gone with you on that tangent.
I love it so much. I mean, birds are incredible besides, because I have my own birds, and I don't know if they would learn to flip over poisonous toads, but, you know, at least the corvids were able to do that. Okay, so zipping back to one of the very first things in the intro about your mom's house. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, because you've talked to a lot of people and you've written articles and you've heard podcasts and you've all the things with haunted locations. On a scale of 1 to 10, where do you place your mom's house?